Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing Summerween series, celebrating hot weather and horror movies by bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Water Street.
Did you guys think that we left, that we were done with Summerween quietly? No. We're back, and we're back with a vengeance, brother. This movie, Cam, this movie,
so before,
it was a lot.
Before Summerween ended, we wanted to hit some real rough movies. Yeah. We wanted something that would mess us up and leave an impression, because those kind of stunned, freaked out episodes, I think those are the most fun to record, and I imagine they're more fun to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, our Red Rooms episode, one of my favorite ones we've ever done.
Totally.
Like that movie. And it's a very similar type of situation as this one, so if you like this movie, go check that one out. But
Blair Witch, Cloverfield. Yeah, a lot of the freaked out episodes, I think there's something there. So
I am troubled, Cam. I'm very troubled.
So today we're talking about the Poughkeepsie Tapes, which is one that I see come up a lot in these sort of discussions.
Yeah, if you Google, most fucked up horror movie, this is going to be on the list.
And it's a found footage horror movie, which is something we got into a few years ago and did a bunch of episodes on, kind of going through the hits.
Yes.
Even things like As Above, So Below, or The Descent. And we loved all of those, but they also effectively scared the shit out of us.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to break down our thoughts and theories and do the whole thing for the Poughkeepsie Tapes. I think a good place to start here is just impressions. We try to do that a lot. It's just top line thoughts. I've got a structured thing, but I want to throw it to you first because you're better off the cuff.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I will say the hype was big for this movie because of all just the internet chat about it. And I think it's kind of earned. I think the content of this movie is so much, and it leaves an impression, because how could it not? I think the style of the movie, in terms of just some of the creative choices that are made, it's a little overdone. I think it's a little overbaked or overworked or overproved or whatever fucking baking analogy you want to use. I think some of it doesn't rely enough on the intensity of the content, and it kind of over pushes it, and I think it could be a bit more subtle, and I think that would have made it even more effective.
It feels like an early work in a career, which it pretty much is, because we know this creative team from the aforementioned As Above, So Below.
Which I did not know until after we watched this movie. And As Above, So Below is one of my favorite found footage movies ever.
It is a rock solid classic.
It's really good. Yeah. So I can see the roots here. I mean, overall, the movie was deeply disturbing. It really upset me. Had a real hard time falling asleep that night.
For a couple nights, actually.
The choice to watch it at night was not a good one. And also, we just moved into a house recently, and we've been in apartments our entire adult lives. And so, for the first time, we're in a larger space where it does feel a bit scarier. And there's a lot of home invasion shit in this movie.
Yeah.
So
let's hit that for a second, because that's a point worth underlining. Because home invasion stuff, I have a few kryptonites. Longtime listeners will know this for me in horror movies. The thing I can't handle is old people.
Yep.
I don't know why. It's just always been my thing.
You heard it here first. Cam is an ageist.
But
it's fine.
Beyond that, on more of a genre level, home invasion screws me up a lot. And we didn't look up anything about this. We just sat down, locked in. So the fact that this hit a lot of the things that bother me, I guess it made it more effective. But my takeaway from this film, and I think you're going to agree with some of this, is utter conflict and contradiction. Because the film is alternately terrible and incredibly effective.
Yes. Yeah, there are moments you're like, this is not good. And there are other moments where you're like, oh my God, So it goes back and forth.
Yeah, on one hand, you have the fact that the film feels overworked. And so this was initially, it hit festivals in 2007, and it was only released, home release, video on demand, all that, in 2017. So there's a lot of stuff with rights, and is it going to be okay to release, and blah, 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 all the stuff that indie horror goes
messy.
Through.
Yeah.
But even before that, the film just feels overproduced.
Yes.
Which is weird, because I don't mean that the production values are high. I mean that it's edited a lot.
Yeah.
And the material just feels overbaked, overcooked, overworked.
Exactly.
To go back to your baking metaphors.
Yeah.
And so much of it is mockumentary style, cut with found footage scenes. And the mockumentary stuff is largely unconvincing. The experts that they have, the FBI people, all our different expertise that we're cutting to
talking
to
heads.
flesh out this case and the crimes and the history of this killer most of it's bad.
Yes. The acting, the performances are not spectacular, and the lines are very written. It does not feel the way that a real person would talk.
But that can be a critique of the actors.
Sure.
Because, and I'm generalizing here, but a bad actor can make a good script sound like shit.
Yes.
It can kind of go both ways.
Yeah. I was going to say, it can work the other way around too. Right. So it's tough.
There's like a double X factor there. So I'm not pointing any fingers, but the final result here is a mostly unconvincing film.
Yeah.
And that's everything that isn't the found footage. Is kind of bad and overworked. But the actual found footage sections are increasingly effective.
Oh, yeah. They're very good. I mean, I was saying the movie isn't very subtle. The actual found footage is subtle in terms of like what we do and don't see, what's just kind of presented to us without a whole lot of flair. The thing that really kind of messes with that effectiveness for me is the distortion on the footage. So throughout the whole movie, there's like a level of like there's a level of film grain that you would expect to see on a home video. But then throughout every clip, there's like a fading in and out wave of physical distortion and color distortion.
The colors almost gently strobe. So if there's a woman walking by in a pink sweater, within the course of 5 seconds, the sweater will turn every color in the rainbow.
Right, yeah. And that's like not necessarily a bad thing, but they're so like not nitpicky. What's the word where you pick and choose? Like it's not consistent. It's just like you can tell that they're using it because they're not confident in the effectiveness of the clip itself. They're either nervous about a special effect that's not convincing enough that they're trying to kind of mask, if there's like blood and that kind of thing, or they're just like, this doesn't look scary enough. How can we make it look scarier? Let's add this weird distortion. And honestly, it's distracting and it looks like a cheap effect. It doesn't look like I'm no longer convinced that I'm watching real footage.
There's a scene where one of the victims is crouching over a balloon and she's in front of what looks like all the slats you have in an apartment. And the wavy effect on that, I think, becomes delirious and good. I think it works really well in that one sequence. But the rest of the time, I think you're right. It feels like something you layer on in post to kind of obscure the footage.
Well, right. And it doesn't make sense that every clip is like this, because I could believe that on this one tape, some weird thing happened and it got distorted. But the fact that it's in every clip we see means that like why would all of them have this weird distortion? It feels like the difference between a really well edited photo and something that has like a shitty Instagram filter on it.
I think that's why the first few found footage cutaways didn't work for me, because all I was seeing were the production shortcomings.
Yes.
It was shoestring budget, filmed in 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, right.
That's par for the course. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's part of
it. But
it
did dull the first few sections because I was just noticing the shortcomings and the reality of film production. But it was after that, once I got used to, okay, you can see past these effects. We're used to them now.
Yeah.
Once you actually see almost the process, because the whole thing about this killer is that he films everything. So most of the cutaways, it's not like Sinister, where every time you jump into the found footage, it's for like the highlight track of a kill.
Right.
A lot of this was process and stalking and following and taunting.
B-roll and
So the more found footage we saw, I think it became much more effective and sinister and troubling.
Yes, right. The more you learned and the more you saw it. You're exactly right. Because some of those clips at the beginning are not that scary. But I think like if they had not been so, like had not made the effects choices that they made, that would have intrigued me. It would have been like, this isn't all that scary. Like, what's going on? Versus, this isn't that scary and this distortion thing is distracting. They don't have confidence in their movie. I think if they pulled back in this element particularly, I think I could have been more forgiving of the talking heads stuff.
Yes.
And been even more troubled by the actual footage.
And part of being a horror fan is dealing with most things being a mixed bag. The occupational hazard is kind of, you have to pan for gold a lot. So all of these things that we're talking about that are negative, let's spend a second jumping to the other end of the scale.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because maybe I should frame this as, what about the later found footage sections did you find so effective that they buoy all the other problems of the film?
It's interesting because, like I said, the movie is it's simultaneously subtle and not subtle. It's not subtle in its editing style, in the effects it's doing on the footage, in the musical and sound effects that it's adding in, like, you know, and the script for the talking heads. That's all like kind of in your face and is distracting. And yet the actual footage, the actual things that we don't see a lot of violence. We don't see most of the horrific things that they describe. We are forced to imagine it. And instead, what we really see is, like you're saying, it's the stalking, it's the before, or it's after he's captured Cheryl, where he has her for I don't know how long years. A lot of what we see is her and like sort of the before and after of other murders that he's committed, like with her sort of part of them, and we're sort of forced to imagine how much, like what kind of role she had in everything, and like it's the subtlety of the actual footage that I think haunts me the most. I don't know what you think.
Just a little background. One of the victims who he captures, he doesn't kill, and instead torments and tries to brainwash and torture her, and he puts a doll mask on her, and she becomes this unwilling, I don't know, assistant, kind of apprentice in a lot of the future kills. So you see a lot of her expression basically just through the eyes that are poking out of this mask. And that becomes increasingly troubling.
Yes.
So I think it's the build in character there that's the most freaky, because the more you see of the actual guy, the killer, I don't think that makes him more scary. The effective parts with him are the lead up. It's the ritual. It's the hunting part, basically. When he's in the car, when he's not jaywalking. What's the
hitchhiking?
When he's hitchhiking with the couple.
Yeah.
Or later when the girls come to the door to sell the Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of that. Him kind of, doing the serial killer thing of playing with his food.
Yeah, it's the anticipation. That's what's so upsetting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you having to hang in that kind of purgatory right on the precipice of horrible things that even a film that goes pretty far in what it shows doesn't show that.
Yes.
I would say that is when he's the scariest. But the thing that I will remember in 5 years about this movie is the Cheryl Dempsey subplot.
Yeah.
And what he does to her and what he ultimately turns her into. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
I think that's what's so effective. And if you compare this to how we felt about As Above, So Below, I think that's more of an unqualified recommendation. You can see the creative team grow between this film and that film. Massive jump in production value, but also narrative structure, narrative pacing, film, cinematic pacing, character development, and acting ability.
Yes, certainly.
And it's almost like going through a band's first album or some demos where you see the promise of what they will become. And I think the Cheryl Dempsey thing is what stands out in this film.
I agree, because they could have just had it been like, this was this crazy serial killer, and he committed all these horrible murders in all these horrible ways. He kept changing MOs. He was unlike anything we've ever seen. And that alone is like upsetting and frightening and disturbing, but you're sort of like, yeah, I've kind of seen all of that. This is like if they put all the serial killers into one, like, okay, scary and horrible, but like not memorable per se. But having this Cheryl Dempsey thing is what takes it to that next level. And you're right, I think that's what took this movie from a whatever to a mixed bag, but still this really affected me kind of thing.
And maybe a good way to close out this impressions section is to talk about the experience of watching the film. It's under 90 minutes. It's a quick watch. It's best watched in a house that you're new to at night. I think that it's like the 4DX experience.
Yeah, it was upsetting.
But we also watched the film on Tubi. And genuinely, I think this is part of the discussion. So it's the only place we could find the film streaming at the time. I don't even know if we could pay to rent it.
Yeah.
I just looked it up, and this is what I found, so we did that.
We're like, fine, Tubi. We've done Tubi before.
Oh, yeah, Tubi's great.
Tubi's fine.
Tubi's great. But I think it enhances this clash and this contradiction that we're trying to get at here. Because the ad breaks, they were like 3 or 4 minutes long.
They were long.
It was every, I don't know, half hour, 20 minutes.
They were longer than they've been in the past. It was a lot.
Everything gets worse.
Everything's bad.
But I think those breaks, they baked in a really interesting kind of, it was almost like the intermission you had in The Brutalist, or the intermission I had when I saw The Hateful Eight, the stage show, when they were showing it on film. An intermission gives you a moment to reflect on what you've seen, on your expectations for the film, what you want to happen when the movie comes back on. It's an interesting moment of reflection. And really the analytical work we do with this show, it was interesting to have that dotted through the film.
Yeah, it's like forced processing time.
And conversation.
Yeah, because
we were at home.
Because we mute the ads. We're not going to watch the Subaru ad. And plus it just interferes with the tone of everything. So we mute the ads and just kind of sat there in silence being like, wow, okay.
And the first time we had an ad break, I think all the shortcomings in the production value are what we talked about. It was the shaky editing, the subpar footage, the world building not really working. But some of those later ad breaks, I mean, genuinely, you were in a stunned silence. And there was this mutual wild discomfort about what we'd just seen within the found footage sections. It's interesting how, as our opinions in the film evolved, even our experiences during the ad breaks were wildly different.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I will say some streaming services, when there are ads, they're put in at horrible times. I will say with this one, it was there was a clear thought, or at least computational technological effort to make sure that it was in between scenes.
What a fancy way of saying that.
Thank you very much.
The film also has distinct numbered chapters, and they were pretty close to those.
Exactly. So it wasn't in the middle of a found footage section that an ad came on. It was okay, it was at natural breaking points. It's where you would actually break it if this were shown on TV, which of course it never would be. But yeah, so it was, you're right. Each one felt different, and the film was really changing in between each of these breaks. It was strange. I mean, I think the moment where the film really turned for me was when we get the full, the extended section where we see the abduction of Cheryl. Because up till then, the clips we had seen were pretty short. They were probably just a few minutes long, if that. Most of them were just, between 10 and 30 seconds. This was the first unbroken. I mean, there were still chunks of time cut out, but
it was a full home invasion.
Yes, there was no interviews in between parts of this.
No reprieve.
You see start to finish him entering the house and him capturing Cheryl, and it's pretty long.
And it's him hiding, it's watching stalking her and the boyfriend, it's hiding in the closet, it's kind of messing with them, killing the boyfriend, and then going, and it really is harrowing.
Yeah, it was really upsetting. I did not enjoy watching that scene.
That was a good turning point. And I think if we put this in the context of the other found footage movies we've enjoyed, we haven't really seen one about a serial killer. Am I wrong there? Because Blair Witch is about a witch.
The witch, yeah.
Cloverfield is about, I don't know what the fuck that was supposed to be. Some kind of, it kind of looks like a bug, but it's got
alien.
Bat wings.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's too tall to be
It's a creature feature disaster movie, different kind of thing.
Exactly. The Descent is a monster movie. As Above, So Below is kind of a Satan theological
supernatural thing, right?
So this kind of stands alone compared to all of those.
That's true. That's really interesting.
It doesn't have a supernatural tinge.
Even Lake Mungo is kind of supernatural. So
yes, especially I think like Longlegs, kind of towards the end, its feet leave the ground and it becomes more of a supernatural story.
Yeah. So this is truly just a person, just true crime.
And I want to reframe the way we talk about this, kind of moving past the impressions into a theory I have that I haven't told you about before we do this.
Okay, I'm looking forward to this.
I want to reframe our understanding of the film within this kind of genre tag of crime horror.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I know films like Zodiac you love.
One of my favorite movies ever. I love that movie.
I feel like one of the ways you got into horror was really liking crime stories.
Honestly, yeah, because my true crime, my big time phase with true crime, which has faded a bit, but when I was really into it, that was right before I got really into horror. I kind of transitioned from true crime into horror. So yeah, you're so right. You're so right.
So I want to look at this question that is intentionally provocative, but I think I can back it up. I got a page full of notes here.
Sounds good.
Is the Poughkeepsie Tapes satire?
Oh, geez. Oh my God.
So
okay.
So
what do you mean?
This is how I want to hit this.
Satire of what or whom?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I was struck by what I've been calling shortcomings in production, where I'm asking, why is this edited like a comedy? Why does this feel slapdash and shitty in a way that comedy can be? We've always talked about in comedy, the lower the production value, the more effective the jokes are.
Right.
In Arrested Development, when they need to do a flashback, use the same actor in a shitty wig.
Yep.
And that's way funnier than recasting or CGI or any of that awful stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's kind of a comedic sensibility to the very basement level production of this film. Also the fact that it's cut so rapidly.
Yeah.
And I think it has 2 editors listed. Maybe I'm making that up. It's got a short runtime, like a lot of comedy films. And this team has a history in making comedy.
Oh, okay.
Before they made this movie, I believe they had just worked on comedy.
Oh, interesting.
Again, I might be wrong, but I'm getting a little hazy now. We prep a lot of episodes at the same time. But also plot-wise. This is where I think it almost became parody. And I think you go through parody into satire. So these are the early kind of flags I caught. Plot-wise, this killer is an impossible greatest hits snowballing of every true crime canon figure.
Yeah, every major serial killer, yeah.
From real life and film.
And that's intentional. And it's like stated in interviews and stuff about the film. Like, and if you know anything about any true crime, like you'll recognize a lot of this stuff.
But it feels absurd. It feels silly in how... It's interesting. Over the course of the film, the killer becomes more competent and more crafty, more ingenious. And you see the experts talk about him with more of a mythical quality to him.
Yes, yes.
But also, kind of in contrast, or again, contradiction there, the more we see him in the found footage sections, the less mythical and powerful and almighty he seems.
That's true.
I mean, honestly, when you see him in his element with Cheryl, when he's wearing the opera thing and he's got the plague doctor mask, it's scary because he's doing horrible things.
Yes.
But to look at him, he's like this yelping cosplayer loser.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
he's a freak. Yeah.
And then you cut back to a poorly acted FBI thing where they're calling him the most devious killer of all time.
Right.
That contradiction almost, it's so violent, it's so clunky that it almost seems to be provoking you to investigate that. That's why I feel like it's pushing into parody, and past parody, we get to something like satire. I think we're kind of reflecting the pitfalls of what happens in a lot of true crime media, whether it's fiction or real world stuff, where there's almost like a drooling mythologizing that happens of all the killers.
I totally get what you're saying. Yes.
And that was happening as we saw this guy and how pathetic he really was.
Yes, yes. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, because a lot of true crime documentaries, especially those kind of from the the heyday of true crime docs, like you think Making a Murderer and that whole like sensation that happened over the next 5 years. But even if you go back to 48 Hours and Dateline and Forensic Files, it's the editing is almost comedic. It is over dramatic. The musical cues are intense. I mean, there are good true crime docs out there that are much more respectful and subtle, but most of them do sensationalize and mythologize the killers.
And if we're talking about crime horror as this kind of genre tag I want to play with, it's really dangerous to cross-pollinate what you do in crime fiction and true crime with what you do in horror.
Yes.
Because it's totally, horror is a release, it's fun, it's goofy, it's expressive, it's art, it's whatever the fuck it wants to be.
Yeah.
It's art, it's fiction. So if you are almost ironically a fan of Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger or John Kramer, or any of these other goofball, Leatherface, who we love, that's fine, because you're enjoying what the creative team is doing, what it's satirizing, what it's commenting on.
Right.
There's so many interesting angles you can take on those works. Where you saying, "Oh, I have a Leatherface T-shirt." But if you had a Jeffrey Dahmer T-shirt, it would be a different thing. So
the thing is, those things exist, and that's what's so.
Exactly.
I mean, this is. I don't want to get too off topic here, but
this is the topic.
That is part of what made me kind of fall back from true crime, was the conflation of these two things in my mind and in the minds of many. Was like this almost fangirling over these true monsters who did and do exist, and making light of it and kind of laughing about it. And if you zoom out, it is all so absurd. And it's also fun to make fun of Ted Bundy because he fucking sucked, right? But also, what'd you say?
Hot take.
Yeah, hot take. I hate Ted Bundy. But also, Netflix a couple years ago puts out this thing of like, here are all the things that Ted Bundy ever said. Hear the voice of the killer. And I'm like, I don't want to hear from Ted Bundy because he was a horrible, terrible person. I'd like to hear from the victims' families. I'd like to hear from the investigators who caught him. I'd like to hear from, people who are not evil and terrible. And the mythologizing of the serial killer is so upsetting and is understandable. How I get how we get there. Like, I don't think it's okay.
It's irresponsible on the level that it's happening within corporations and massive groups of people, and packaging these murders as an entertainment product. That's not great.
Right. And if you want to talk about Longlegs, I think Longlegs really strives to investigate that idea as well.
Yeah.
The movie, the way it's marketed, the way it's presented, the character of Longlegs, Nicolas Cage's character, is mythologized to the extreme. And over the course of the movie, he's broken down into being just a man. And that's really interesting too.
Right.
And so here, I agree with what you're saying. It's so overdone that you're almost kind of making fun of the true crime doc in itself.
So there's a lot to skewer here. And horror is, if nothing else, very good at doing things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's about the presentation of these things. I think the film, if we are doing some level of satire or parody here, I think it's about the presentation of serial killers and true crime. And what the movie does with the really bad production value, what it does is kind of force that contradiction, force you to confront the clash between what we consider highbrow and what we consider lowbrow. And you have to remember, this was made in 2007. So I think it's fairly fascinating to combine the network documentary cutaway sequences with that era's indie horror tropes. So you're taking... there are a lot of things that the found footage sequences evoke. I think we can point to a lot of the horror of the day, whether it's Saw or even Blair Witch or any of the other...
Like Paranormal Activity.
That was also 2007, so that probably wasn't an influence if they were the same year.
Okay, fair.
Yes, I think Saw, Blair Witch, plenty of the other grindhouse indie kind of stuff of that time. To put that on the same footing as the nightly news is an interesting bit of commentary.
It's true.
That is, you are posing things in an interesting way there. And that juxtaposition reveals a lot of uncomfortable similarities. So at the time, a lot of horror was being blasted with this critique that it was all just, remember this phrase, torture porn.
Yeah, that was all the rage. Yeah.
Which is a shitty, inelegant, incurious way of saying exploitation, I think.
I think so.
I always hated that tag, but I think that's what it is getting at.
I think you're right, yeah.
So putting that torture porn tag basically on the local news crews as well, and law enforcement at a local and a federal level, that's really interesting. To put the FBI on the same level of societal disdain as Eli Roth and James Wan, that's a pretty fucking cool thing to do in 2007.
Wow. That's really interesting.
I think I'm calling that satire. And in this send-up of these kind of societal flaws in the way we handle this stuff, it's interesting that it kind of predicts some future trends within the horror genre. There were so many times I was reminded of what Damien Leone would do later in Terrifier.
Yeah.
As much as I love Terrifier, the kind of rubbernecking, sick curiosity that those films stoke and evoke and interrogate, I think a lot of that was predicted here. And especially with the Cheryl Dempsey arc, the character of Victoria, it's the same fucking thing.
Interesting. Okay.
The face is messed up in a different way, but that whole reluctant, poisoned apprentice thing, that's there in Terrifier. But even if you don't jump into the future and you just look at the horror paragons of the day in 2007, Cheryl Dempsey is a non-romanticized, non-narrative version of Amanda from Saw.
Oh, you're so right.
An apprentice without like the safety of... I mean, they kind of get to the same point because Amanda turns to the dark side as well.
Yes.
But there's a total lack of pretense and what's the term? Plot armor.
Okay.
Basically on Cheryl Dempsey that you do get on Amanda. This is a much more bitter and brutal and horrifying version of that story.
I think that's so interesting.
So I think that's satire in that it seems to be explicitly critiquing something that was defining the genre at the time.
That makes sense because I think I was approaching this movie the way that I think about, oh my gosh, what's the movie where the Funny Games? Like, I was thinking about it as if it was going to be like Funny Games, where Funny Games is a true, like, stark presentation of not true crime. It's not a true story, but it's also a home invasion, right? And it presents it in this very non-cinematic way that is just upsetting. We did an episode about Funny Games in another Summerween series a couple years ago, and it's that's one of my favorite discussions we've ever had. I will never watch that movie again, but it was fantastic. It's a really good movie, but it's so good that it makes you like feel really bad about what you're watching, and it makes you like, it's not sensational at all. It's not overdone at all. The editing is actually very slow, and you just feel like you're watching something horrific unfold without any set dressing, without any music, without any fancy special effects or, you know, scary sound effects or jump scares. It's like, just like, hey, here's a horrific thing for you to think about, and let's add in some meta commentary about why you're watching this in the first place. And this is not what this is. It's kind of approaching the same idea, but from this like satirical way and presenting it in this overbaked way. That's really interesting.
It's a difference in camera lenses, I think. Funny Games is hitting a lot of these ideas zoomed in real tight. It's a very personal film. It feels like it's absolutely about you, the viewer, and the stuff you watch. It's just about you reckoning with these impulses and desires you have, where I think you're expected to transpose your family that you grew up with on the family in the house.
100%, yeah.
The Poughkeepsie Tapes is dealing with things from a more zoomed out perspective,
yes,
where it's more about society and how not just in the way we present these stories within the local news, but also the way movies represent a lot of these stories. It's a societal and a cinematic fascination that we've had with this subject matter. I think it really broke into the public atmosphere through something like Silence of the Lambs. And that's exactly where I'm going from Silence of the Lambs, because the thing that solidifies this, I think the smoking gun for me in confidently calling this a work of satire, is the film's gorgeous caricature of John Douglas.
Oh, okay.
So, John Douglas, if you don't know, he is the guy who wrote the Mindhunter book. So he is who Holden, or Jonathan Groff's character, is based on. We're going to cover this in another way, but I've been reading a bunch of his books and I've taken an interest in that. I've been having my own little true crime moment. We'll do an episode on Patreon about it. But John Douglas is the guy who invented this sort of profiling and the serial killer tag and that whole FBI era. He worked with the filmmakers on Silence of the Lambs, but then becomes this linchpin moment for the public consciousness, thinking about serial killers, starting to mythologize them, get obsessed, and transform all of this horrible shit into fodder for entertainment. So they have a one-to-one allegory for John Douglas as one of their experts in this movie. And it's about as mean-spirited as you could make it. Because the first thing you said when the guy walked in was, oh, it's like Dr. Loomis.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They looked like Dr. Loomis from Halloween.
And that's the impulse, I think, from the horror brain.
Yes.
But the fact that I'm in the crime brain, the stuff they give you about this guy's backstory, he's only John Douglas.
He's obviously him.
There's nothing else he could be.
That's who he's meant to be.
And he's teaching at Quantico, and he's kind of doing that thing. But this rendition of John Douglas, for as many faults as you can find with the man and what he's done to this industry, he's so gleeful and aloof and smug. And the whole while he's talking about this stuff and showing you some of the footage that we then see in the found footage cutaways, he's mugging for the camera through most of that. It's a real nasty depiction, an indictment of him.
And I think presenting him in this way, and in a way that I think not accidentally reminds me of Dr. Loomis, is like it's making fun of him, because Dr. Loomis isn't a fantastic character, but he's over the top, he's over dramatic, he sensationalizes Michael Myers to the max, especially in Rob Zombie's version of Halloween, and also what he said, the darkest eyes, the blackest eyes, he makes Michael Myers a mythology, and that's what this John Douglas stand-in is doing too, which I think totally supports your argument about this satirical version of everything.
When you say the film is making fun of him, that makes me think it's parody. I think it's blaming him.
Okay.
And that's why I'm calling it satire.
That's a
and
better
honestly,
way to describe it.
I think Rob Zombie's Halloween did some of this too by recasting the Loomis character as not just this dogged good guy on the side of the angels to a guy who scraps for parts what happened to this kid and sells it as a book and does all these speaking tours, the killer's eyes, mythologizing him forever.
And making money off of this,
And that's where I think we slip into satire. It's about blame. There's an anger behind this portrayal. And I think there's the same sensibility of satire when we get to the ending of the Poughkeepsie Tapes. Because there's a fake out where you think you caught the guy and he's a cop, and you meet the partner and you meet the guy's son, and then they twist the knife again, and the big reveal is that the justice system completely fucked up and killed a guy who was innocent. And then the killer gets away. And then we go back to Charlotte Dempsey and find out she's dead too.
Yeah.
And she's just another victim left in his wake.
And they never find him. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so the whole system is broken and can't solve anything.
So on one hand, you can say this is a riff on the gulf between true crime and how we spin these things up for horror or whatever sort of fiction we want to sell to people, where there's no narrative closure usually in real life.
Right.
So we're denying that sort of narrative closure in this satirical version of events. But I think also, if you're looking at the kind of nasty little critiques we're making, it's a gesture towards what the movie opens with, which is part of the documentary footage, pointing to how many serial killers are going at any one time, and the implication of almost none of these crimes are solved. So then it becomes an interesting critique of the justice system. But I think it also is kind of a knock at the horror genre in a much less... this is a less important thing, but I think we're kind of riffing on the impulse that all good horror movies have, where you pull your last punch at the end of the movie and turn it into a franchise, where you can't kill the killer because you need him to come back in case we get greenlit for a sequel.
James Bond will return. Yeah.
Or most other horror movies where they do kill him in the first one and then they miraculously bring him back later on. The franchising impulse of particularly the slasher genre, which you can look at as an evolution or response to how we fetishize true crime in our media.
Yes.
But there are a couple other weird elements here that I think further or sour this satire. One is how often the movie strangely evokes the mockumentary style of the early aughts.
Okay.
If you're thinking about this in 2007, there are moments here where it's not just, oh, this actor's not doing this line well. There are moments that sincerely reminded me of The Office.
Oh, interesting.
Some of the experts that we cut to are goofy, and other ones are like enthusiasts. They're like starstruck fans. Remember the guy who's the kind of nerdy looking white guy with no beard who's talking, he's just kind of excited to be there.
Yeah.
And then you cut to the, I think he was a blood tech, a medical tech.
Oh, okay.
Who was just totally bored and didn't want to be there.
Yeah,
It felt like Creed.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
There was such a range of the people who didn't have this faux gravity to them.
I see.
Versus the FBI agents who were doing all of the mythologizing.
Yeah. This is the most serious thing I've ever seen.
And again, I think by presenting those in such violent contrast, the film seems to be pushing us to examine both of those portrayals. Is one good because they're acting and doing the mythologizing? Is that a better rendition of it? Or is the banal, this is my job, I'm desensitized to this shit, is that more interesting?
And either way, we're pointing to, hey, the people who are in charge of this, who are supposed to solve this shit, are either bored and checked out and don't care, or they contribute to the sensationalizing of everything.
And I think what makes this effective, and where I want to kind of revise the initial critique of bad production values, I think the production value is kind of finely tuned to serve what I'm calling satire here. Because the people, the FBI agents, I'm mostly using the law enforcement experts who are doing the acting, they never feel real.
No.
They feel like, oh, you're kind of a bad actor. But the ones that are all banal and grumpy and disinterested, they don't feel real either. And that pushes us to ask, what is real? And who the fuck am I to say what is, one person's doing their job. The other people are trying to, build up the mythology of this guy?
Yeah,
There is no real. It's all artifice and presentation. This is all packaged for my, entertainment?
Yeah.
And the film pushes that so hard at the end by doing the Goosebumps thing of saying, "Ooh, the killer, he might go see this movie and he could be next to you in the theater."
Yeah, right.
And you watching the movie, you can say, "That's really cheesy." But you can also say, why would that guy say that? Who wins in that scenario? Who does that serve? Why would we do that? So we're leaving the viewer with this feeling of the grotesque, not just from what we've seen in the found footage, but everything else too. And all of it rolls together to this feeling of exploitation, of ineptitude, of fear. And that disgust that you and I felt when we turned the lights back on, the lights don't come up at home. You have to do it yourself.
You have to do it yourself. You have to get up and go into the dark corner. Yeah.
But that disgust leads you to a particularly unsatisfying reflection on true crime as a genre, on horror as a genre, on the American justice system, and, like you were talking about with Funny Games and Red Rooms, audience expectation and desire.
I think that makes total sense. I'm totally on board with you. And I think, I was trying to figure out, why do I feel so icky after this movie? Because it's not just the content itself. Because you said, remember, this isn't real. This is fake. This is not a true story. And so think of this like you think of any other horror movie where it's just a fiction. And it was hard for me to do that because of its presentation, but it wasn't done in this way that felt like it was respectful of what could have happened or the types of things that do happen. It made me feel just really, really icky. And I think this interpretation of it helps explain that. And it makes me appreciate the film more. I'm totally on board with you. I think this makes total sense.
If you watch it straight, I think it's like most horror movies where there's some good and some bad, and you kind of just scrap it for parts and remember the parts that you liked. But I think if you view it through this satirical lens, there's a lot more going on, and it becomes a much more profound work.
Definitely. And because when I was feeling like, it wasn't all that good, it kind of pissed me off because it's different in a different kind of horror movie. Like some bad horror movies I really enjoy. Like I've said this, horror is like pizza. Even bad horror is good, right? Like it can be fun and goofy. But this was not fun and goofy because nothing about the content is fun or goofy. And I felt like, I think I was left feeling like if you're going to approach this subject, like nothing supernatural, nothing that's like totally ridiculous, could never happen, but like this sort of like amalgamation of all the worst things that have happened in humanity and putting them all in one guy, you've got to do it with like the utmost respect and like care. And so the fact that it did feel so over the top in these many ways, and it was kind of sort of mythologizing itself, that made me kind of mad. But now that I understand what you're talking about, I think that makes total sense.
I mean, that's just one lens. We never try to ascribe artistic intent. This is just, you can interpret things however you want, and this is how I happen to think about this movie.
I'm on board because I'm with you. Like half the time I'm like, this is so incredibly done and effective, and the other half the time I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Who was in charge of this part of the movie? So in part, you're right. You can chalk that up to it's a film early in somebody's career. Budgets are tough. They probably couldn't get the best actors out there to play these FBI agents, but this is a cool way to think about it. Damn. Way to go. This is very good.
Yeah.
Good job.
So crime horror is this almost subgenre that I want to play with. I don't know if someone else has I'm sure every thought you've ever had has been spoken into a podcast.
No original thoughts.
But crime horror, I'm kind of taken by this idea. And to pull back the curtain a little bit, Maggie and I have been talking about other crime horror movies we can cover here as a way to wrap up this year's Summerween with something of a theme, in the same way we did that found footage series a couple years ago. So expect a couple other crime horror. If all goes to plan, we're going to try to do some more crime horror here in the next couple weeks.
Yes, some of which we might have mentioned in this episode. So stay tuned for that. This has been fun. Let us know what you think of the Poughkeepsie Tapes, of the things that we've discussed here. What do you think about sort of the...
What's your read of the movie? What's your interpretation?
Do
you play
like
it straight? Do you like it or not like it? I know it's fairly divisive online.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do you think it's satire?
I'd love to hear about that. What do you think of sort of just like... I'm always interested in people talking about true crime and the true crime sensation, and how can you be a fan of true crime, and what does that mean? And is it even ethical to consume a true crime doc? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts about that. And of course, if you want to check out our discussion on funny games, you can find that in our horror playlist on YouTube, or you just search it in whatever platform you're on. And also our Red Rooms episode came out a couple months ago. Go check that out as well.
We got plenty of horror. Especially so indie horror, we have for days. There's even a playlist over on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There's a tag over on Patreon.
Also,
and there's plenty of horror over on the Patreon in the bonus episodes.
I was going to say, the Patreon, there's a lot of horror over there if you want to check us out. Our Patreon, the link is in the description. It's $2 a month. You can get 2 bonus episodes every month, plus access to everything we've ever released on there, including a lot of the horror that we talked about. But also, one of our very, very early Patreon posts, which is actually... It was a Substack post that I wrote when we started out in Substack like a million years ago. I wrote sort of a reflection on my true crime experience. So it's not an episode. It's just something I wrote. I believe that's on the Patreon. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes, you can just go read that. That's fun over there.
And again, if all goes to plan, we're going to do another true crime bonus episode about my kind of phase through true crime, which will be very different. A lot of John Douglas. So
yeah.
You can subscribe and get that the second it goes live as well.
And also, if you want to support the show in other ways, of course, like, subscribe, all that. But more importantly, check out Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space. It's not a true crime. It's a light sci-fi dark comedy. It's a ride through space and time. It's Alien meets Flubber, right? It's Monty Python meets Friday the 13th. I mixed up our comps there.
Okay.
Whatever, you get it. It's scary and goofy and funny all at once. It's really, really fun. You can read it as a regular book. You can order it online, or you can check out the fully produced audio drama. You can purchase that or check it out on like streaming platforms and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Links to that are in the description.
Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back here next week with another brand new episode.